Today we're digging into a really incredible story from ancient history. It's about how a club of friendly nations, built to protect each other, ended up getting, well, taken over by its strongest member. We're talking about the Delian League and how it became the Athenian Empire.
Right. And to get the timeline, you have to go back to 478 BCE. The Greeks had just done the impossible. They'd beaten back this massive invasion from the Persian Empire. But everyone was thinking, what if they come back? So the mission was pretty clear. Make sure that never happens again and maybe get a little payback.
And Athens was the obvious choice to lead this new alliance. I mean, they had poured everything into their navy. They had the best ships, the best sailors. The whole goal, at least at the start, was to keep the Greek city-states free and independent.
And that initial spirit was, genuinely cooperative. They even chose a neutral spot for their headquarters, the sacred island of Delos. It was set up to be a real team effort to make sure no single city-state could just run the show.
Okay, so how did it work? How did they fund this massive defensive force?
Well, members had a choice. They could either provide their own warships, fully staffed and ready to go, or they could just contribute a certain amount of silver to a common treasury.
And that treasury was kept on Delos, right? To keep it neutral.
Exactly. And to make sure it was all fair, an Athenian statesman named Aristides, who is known for being super fair, he calculated what everyone owed.
How did he do that?
It was based on how wealthy each city was. The measurement was a talent, which was the standard weight of silver. So bigger, richer cities paid more talents. Simple as that.
And we have to remember, this money was for serious military hardware. An Athenian warship, a trireme, was the high-tech weapon of its day. It needed something like 170 professional rowers.
Oh, absolutely. The costs were huge. This wasn't just pocket change. It was funding a full-time professional navy.
So for the smaller islands, this must have seemed like an amazing deal.
It was a fantastic deal. You get protection from the best navy in the world for a fee you can actually afford. At the beginning, it was a win-win for everyone.
But that's where the problem started, right? The structure itself had a flaw.
A huge one. Athens just had the best system for building ships and training sailors. No one else could really compete on that scale.
And over time, most of the other members figured it was just easier to pay the money.
Way easier. I mean, why pull your own citizens away from their farms and businesses to go be rowers when you can just write a check? They essentially started paying a protection fee.
So what's the long-term result of that?
The result is that all the money flows into the central treasury. And Athens is the only one actually building ships and gaining military experience. The other allies, their own navies basically disappeared.
They become customers, not partners.
Exactly. And Athens becomes the sole provider of security. That lets them start making all the big decisions without really asking anyone else.
To be fair, though, in those early years, they were incredibly successful.
Oh, no question. They launched campaigns that completely kicked the Persians out of the Aegean Sea. The biggest one was the Battle of Eurymedon, where they just annihilated a huge Persian fleet and army.
And those wins made Athens look like the ultimate defender of Greek freedom.
It cemented their reputation. They'd earned the glory, but that glory was kind of hiding what was really happening to the power balance within the league itself.
And that imbalance finally comes to a head in 454 BCE. This is a huge turning point.
A massive one. The entire league treasury is moved from the neutral island of Delos to the city of Athens.
What was the official excuse for that?
The Athenians claimed it would be safer in Athens, behind their big stone walls, but everyone knew what it really meant.
It meant the money was theirs now.
And it meant the money was theirs. The alliance as a partnership of equals was, for all intents and purposes, over.
And once that treasure chest was in Athens, the famous leader Pericles decides how to spend the surplus.
Right. Athens had been burned by the Persians years earlier. So Pericles uses the League's money, the Allies' money, to rebuild his own city into something spectacular.
How on earth did he justify that?
His argument was pretty clever, in a way. He basically said, look, as long as we're doing our job and protecting the seas, any leftover money is ours to spend on making your city beautiful.
Wow. I can't imagine the other members were happy about that.
Happy is not the word. This surplus paid for the Parthenon, that giant temple to Athena on the Acropolis.
So their defense contributions were being spent on Athenian decorations.
That's it, exactly. And that's the moment most historians point to and say, okay, the Delian League is now officially the Athenian Empire.
And once it was an empire, membership was no longer optional.
Not at all. Athens started treating its former allies like subjects who existed to provide them with money.
What happened if a city tried to leave?
The Athenian navy showed up. Fast. Places like Naxos and Thassos tried to rebel, and they were crushed. Athens would take away their ships, tear down their city walls, and force them back in.
And the control wasn't just military, was it? They used the legal system too.
Oh, yeah. This was a key move. Athens made a rule that all major legal cases involving allied citizens had to be tried in Athenian courts by Athenian judges.
That's just a recipe for bias.
It guaranteed that Athenian interests, business, politics, whatever, always won. Plus, it was a huge pain for the allies who had to travel all the way to Athens.
And to really rub it in, they set up these special colonies called kleruches.
Right. These weren't just army bases, they were settlements of poor Athenian citizens who were given land inside allied territory.
So an occupying force.
A permanent occupying force.
Yeah.
And these settlers kept their Athenian citizenship, so they were always loyal to Athens, acting like a garrison right on the allies' doorstep.
They also got involved in local politics, right? Pushing for democracies.
They did. And this wasn't just because they loved the idea of democracy. It was tactical.
How so?
Well, governments run by a few wealthy families, oligarchies, tended to be more independent and might resist Athens. But democracies often relied on Athenian military support to stay in power.
So the new democratic leaders were basically loyal to Athens from the start.
Exactly. It was a way to control the empire from the inside out.
And what about the economy? How did they integrate everyone?
This part was, kind of brilliant in its own way. They forced every member city to use Athenian silver coins and their system of weights and measures.
Which makes trade simpler, I guess.
It does, but it also makes every single city completely dependent on the Athenian market.
Yeah.
All major business had to flow through Athens.
So they were getting rich off every transaction.
Totally. Plus, they put taxes on trade and controlled vital resources like the grain supply,
Right.
always making sure their own citizens got the best deal. It went from dependency to pure exploitation.
All of this power in one place, it must have made the other Greek states pretty nervous.
Extremely nervous. Everyone who wasn't already part of the empire started looking to Athens' big rival, Sparta. And Sparta jumped at the chance. They started presenting themselves as the great liberators who would restore freedom to the Greeks.
And all of that tension is what leads directly to the Peloponnesian War.
The devastating Peloponnesian War, yeah. That fear and hatred of Athenian power just boiled over and pulled almost the entire Greek world into conflict.
It's just amazing to think about the legacy, though. All that wealth they took from the allies. It paid for the golden age of Athens.
It really did. It funded the philosophy of people like Socrates and Plato, the great plays, and of course the incredible architecture of the Acropolis.
And we still copy those architectural styles today for our own government building.
We do. But the story is also a huge warning, isn't it? It shows how a group for mutual defense can turn into a tool for one member's ambition. The freedom of the many was sacrificed for the glory of the one.
And that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How often do modern alliances set up for defense or trade end up just serving the interests of the most powerful nation in the room? Is losing some independence always the hidden price of security?
Something for you to chew on.
See you next time.